Well, hi there, my friends. How's everybody doing today? It's April 22nd, 2020, 4/22 through 2020. You know, I've actually wanted to make a few videos lately, and every time I sit down to make one, I just have no interest in it. And as I said this before, the irony is that, during the time when I have extra time to make videos, when everybody's locked down and everybody's home, I've lost interest in making videos. Right now it's 9:52 p.m. on April 22nd. I figure I have to make this before midnight. I wanted to talk about Earth Day, the the irony of Earth Day. The last thing you'd expect for the 50th anniversary of Earth Day would be for the Earth to be clean air, clean water. Humans are pretty much locked down around the world, and therefore waterways, pandas are fucking. Hey, if you haven't seen it already, I know a lot of you know exactly what I'm talking about. I believe it was the Tokyo Zoo. They've been trying to get these two pandas to fuck for 10 years. And after they closed the park down and isolated everybody, they caught video of these two pandas getting it on, and it is hilarious. People have talked about pandas fucking forever. Sorry to make it that brutal, but it's the truth, it's nature. It's what happens. Animals fuck, right? So, I'm going to start off with talking about Earth Day for a minute. And don't laugh at the guy's name. Gaylord Nelson was the guy's name who came up with Earth Day. If I'm not mistaken, he was a professor. Anyway, he was a senator. That's right. He was a senator from Wisconsin. And after the Santa Barbara oil spill of 1969, which I'm not familiar with myself, he wanted to come up with a day that would protect the Earth, that would raise awareness for the planet and for protecting our natural waterways, the planet in general, right? And so he created this teach-in day. It was considered a teach-in day to teach younger people about the environment. And it became later known as Earth Day. The reason he picked, people wonder, why is Earth Day on April 22nd? I'll tell you. And I found this out by looking it up. He wanted a day to teach students about the planet, like a teach-in. But he wanted to have it halfway between spring break and finals, which made total sense. You've got spring break in March, you've got finals in June, April 22nd, right? That way he could get maximum participation from the people, okay? So that's probably enough information about the roots of Earth Day. It happened in 1970, so we are in year 50. It is the, what is it, the semi-centennial of, I don't know if that's even a term, but a 50-year, Earth Day, and it's the cleanest one we've had in decades because we are all locked down. Now, I'm not saying it's a positive thing that we're all fucked over. I'd like to say that it's important to look at the positive side of things right now. And I wanted to start off by talking about Earth Day there, but of course I'm going to segue into the reality of what we're facing right now. So if you don't want to hear the truth, then you can turn it off now and just live with teddy bears and fucking pandas. I thought of this idea earlier. You're only intelligent as what you hear. And if you can't read, you're going to miss a lot of information. And I've realized a lot of people don't read. Okay? And I'm not here to insult anybody instantly. People out there, those of you who don't read, probably think, oh, he's insulting me, thinking I'm dumb. That's not what I mean. What I mean is that the media manipulates people's minds. And we all know this. And I've had people attack me from the right incessantly about my opinions on Trump and on my thoughts about, I don't know, when I talk about listening to experts or trusting people who are authorities on subjects. It's not that I'm believing my politicians, it's that I'm believing the scientists and fellow human beings that look me in the eye and say, hey, this is really going on. You ought to pay attention to this. And I think, I can look at this guy who's telling me based on his 20, 30 years of experience, or I can believe this idiot over here who just wants to get reelected. And I'm not just, don't think I'm talking about Trump. I'm talking about all politicians. Everybody wants to get reelected. You want to hear something ridiculous? The governor of Missouri. I just found this out earlier. The governor for Missouri just filed a lawsuit against China for lying about the virus. I thought about this. Was there ever a more political move than this, right? You cannot sue another country. Any expert will tell you. But this guy took the time to post it, tell people about it, do interviews about it, and say, yeah, I'm suing China for a virus. What kind of a world do we live in? Maybe if you win, what was the guy's name? I can't remember. Anyway, if you do win this lawsuit against China, maybe you could just import the wall and put it up between you and the rest of us. I mean, if we ever needed a real wall in this country, it would be around the people who pay attention and are aware, and the people who just believe what their politicians tell them. And I know that there are several different opinions on what that means. Some people think that all the liberals are fucked. Some people think all the conservatives are fucked. And I think anybody who believes either one of those is completely fucked. Because there are a lot of different opinions out there. What really matters is what protects the average person. Now, you might call me a socialist because of that. I say, what helps the society? What helps the nation, right? Call me a socialist. But how many of you are getting relief checks? I found out that even churches and pastors can get these checks. These relief checks for not getting paid. There's a guy named Tony Spell who is a evangelical preacher from down south somewhere. He's the guy who got arrested twice for having people in his church while he was supposed to not have, events. And he said, oh, well, this is an essential service church. Of course, in the end, everybody has their own opinion. And the way I feel is if people want to go to church, so be it. But what he asked his congregation was to give him the $1,200 checks. He said, give it to us and to the missionaries and to the preachers because we're not making any money during this time. He's asking his flock to give him their relief checks. Basically, the church wants socialism, while at the same time the church wants kickbacks from the government and loans. Now, I'm not insulting religion. I'm dissing the church. I find churches to be appalling. I think that if you really want to separate church and state and you don't want to pay taxes, and you want to have land that's tax-free, you want to have a building that's tax-free, you want to have income and donations that are tax-free, then you sure as hell aren't getting nothing out of our coffers when you need a kickback. That's the way I feel about it. I just had to get that out. But it's not just the churches, it's the banks. The banks that want the bailouts, the airline industry, Boeing, who was already failing. I even found out that Trump had asked some other people, God damn it, I wasn't going to talk about him. He asked, apparently, and this, I just read this, I can't confirm it for fact, but he asked Ireland, or maybe it was either Ireland or the UK, to pay his wages for his people at his golf course that's over in Europe, because he can't get kickbacks. He's the president, so he's supposedly not supposed to get bailouts through this program. And that's got to be a tough position to be in. But let's just move past that, because I really didn't want to get into Trump. I want to get into some major important points that I want to make here. Guys, girls, in-betweens, whatever you associate as, we're all fucked. We are completely fucked right now, and I want to explain why. It doesn't mean that you as an individual are screwed because of this situation. It means that if you really think that we're just going to go back to work and get back to business as usual tomorrow, then I'm just going to say this. If you're right, and we do, I will make a video in a couple months saying, man, I was an idiot. This virus was nothing. I feel like a fool, but I'm glad that I was wrong. But in the case of what I've heard and the studies I've done, which is incessant, consistent research, we are in for the very long haul. We've bailed out banks. I read an article about how Harvard had taken $8 or $9 million in loans. Harvard. Now, I don't want to get into this aspect of it, but Harvard has, I believe, a $42 billion endowment. I talked about this like a year ago. 42 billion, not million. That's 42,000 millions endowment saved up, basically stockpiled money. And they had the fucking gall to borrow money. And this is one thing Trump called them out on. And they told him, they said they were going to return it. I say, I'm not completely opposed to the things the president does. I just follow my heart and what I feel is right and wrong. In this case, yeah, these corporations, these companies, these big burger chains and corporate conglomerates that are taking these loans, I just want to say this. So last thing I'm going to say about money. If you think the government can write thousands of dollars in checks to every American and then bail out the banks, bail out the airline industry, bail out the cruise line industry, bail out basically everyone. If you think that the government can just print money to do these things and that it's not going to hit your bottom line, you're completely fucking deluded. I would urge you to do a little bit of economics research. I'm not trying to insult anyone. I'm saying that people say, well, this is a good thing. What's frustrating is that a lot of these people who say, yeah, the government's helping us out, a lot of these people are the same ones who said socialism is bad. And I would just like to ask anyone out there who hates socialism, any of the people who have just, any individual who's watching this who has called someone a socialist as an insult, who just got a check in the mail for $1,200 or more, I would like to ask you how you can think that is not socialism. Think about it for a minute. Answer the question in the comments section. I'd really like to know. Not to be argumentative or arrogant, but that is socialism. You can say, well, I pay into my taxes. Yes, you do. Oh, I pay into my Social Security. Yes, you do. But that doesn't entitle you to a check when times are bad. Shit happens. This is what insurance is for, not taxes. Insurance is to protect you against hard times. Yet all of you, every single one of you, are participating right now in a socialist experiment. I know people will deny that. People will argue against that. I'm not a socialist. I'm not a communist. I'm also not a capitalist. I believe that people should take care of one another. And this is what I see. This is the positive side in this. A lot of people are taking care of one another and realizing the government won't do it and that it's not their responsibility to do it. When Trump argues that it's not the Fed's responsibility to bail everyone out, I agree. However, if this is a truly capitalist nation and we are merchants, then what are we paying taxes for? And that's the big question people should be asking. What do our taxes go to? If you're going to give up 20, 30, 40% of your wages, you should be able to be protected during hard times. You should be able to get decent prices on gasoline, decent prices on groceries. You should have subsidized farm products, things that allow us to be taken care of as individuals. But during the hardest time right now, they're raising prices on things. They're dumping thousands, hundreds of thousands of gallons of milk down the drain and beer down the drain and everything else because it's aimed at restaurants, not at stores. I'm not saying it's a giant conspiracy, but rather we are so ill-equipped to take care of our people that when something happens, we can't even give them the right food because we don't have the right packaging and resources. We don't produce our own drugs in our own country. We don't produce our own equipment, our own stuff in our own facilities because we have pawned all that off into India that makes our drugs and China that makes our drugs, our masks, everything else. The big question is, what exactly is America at this point? When did the banks become the good guys? When did we start to think, oh, they're here to hold our wages and protect us? And when did we decide that bailing them out was a good idea? Not just in 2008, but again today. Inflation is the hidden tax, if you're not aware of this. And now I feel like I'm preaching. I wanted this to be a positive thing. I wanted to talk about mostly Earth Day, but here I get into talking about banks and whatnot. Well, here's the thing. People will travel when it's safe, and they feel like it's safe. People will go out to eat at restaurants when they feel like it's safe. People will go shopping when they feel like it's safe. Other than groceries, let's say, So the government's not going to tell us when to open. The local governments aren't going to tell us when to open. It's going to be a matter of experimentation. And here's my thought on this. We're not over the curve. We're not even close. Some states have beat it. Other states aren't even close. But as a nation, if you look at the statistics, you look at the charts, we are still a long way out. And this isn't just a matter of this disease. When it goes away, it's not going to mean we're okay and in the clear. Here's the main point I want to rub in here. We've already been dealing with desertification for a long time. A lot of the crops are dying. A lot of people are starving. It's been a very difficult couple of years for a lot of people around the world. On top of that, last year there was a huge swarm of locusts, a major outbreak. And if you're not aware of what's going on right now, which a lot of people probably aren't because we're all focused on other things, there is a 20 times larger outbreak of locusts right now in Africa. And from what I read, it could be up to 400 times larger within a couple of months once they have reproduced because it's extra rainy there. These locusts are wiping out their crops. And I know a lot of people may think, well, fuck them, they're in Africa. And it's true, that sounds harsh, but a lot of people do think that way. Well, whatever happens in Africa is a ripple effect. Whatever happens in Syria, every bomb that's dropped, every single fucking migrant that is stuck with their family and can't get across the border. It's easy for, they all affect us. And it's easy for Americans to sit and say, oh yeah, these Mexicans come up here and take my job. Look, the world is a complicated place. I get it. But when you look at the big picture, we really are all one race. And not only that, but we are all one planet. This is the first year that I've been able to really sit back with my family for a long period of time and think about these things during a time when the earth is quiet. Have you noticed that the birds, I thought this was in my head, but my oldest son, he's 25, he said the same thing. He's like, have you noticed the birds seem like they're talking more? Just seems louder out there. We don't live in a city. We live in the suburbs, and generally traffic is about the same here as it was before. It's not that much different. I live in Washington State, and we nailed the curve a long time ago, so there's a lot of people moving around. Everything's pretty much getting back to normal here, except for half the people wearing masks, myself included. But when the birds are out chirping, you notice these things. And my son said that, and I thought, I wonder if it's true. I looked it up and found out that all around the world, they've measured it, that birds are singing more. And I'm not going to get into the Schumann frequency and the Schumann resonance, which is the Earth's natural frequency, but it gets affected not just by lightning, but by our activity. Cruise ships, shipping containers, or shipping, container ships, everything from major city rumble, all these things affect nature. And yeah, I sound like some hippie, and I am. There's nothing more beautiful than sitting back and listening to nature do its thing. And we've missed that for a while. I never thought this would happen in this way. I thought a virus might hit. But I more often than that thought about a solar flare or a major CME, or coronal mass ejection that took out the grid. I've studied about that for years, and I thought, if I go out one night at 9 p.m. and the entire sky is beautiful, I can see the whole Milky Way and all the stars, I'll know that the whole grid is down. And I've realized that in this situation, it's kind of like, instead of seeing the whole grid down, I see society sitting down for just a moment, lending a different perspective to humanity, to each other. We're not fucking idiots. We're not, there are plenty of idiots out there, but we've come a long way, people. We owe it to our grandparents and their grandparents. And here we are, living through what I personally believe is the peak of society. I believe that, and I don't mean that in a good way, the great peak or anything, but just this is the moment in time. And I've thought about this for the last few years, that we're living in the time where the largest population on Earth exists. And the most progress by society standards has, accrued itself into this ball of, we've done this, we've done this, we've done this. And all I can say is I hope we step back and see ourselves for what we are, whatever that might be. And that takes all hands on deck. Because I still sure as hell don't know what the hell we are. We'll find out.